Thank you, Tom. It's really good to be here again. I have come to love this community. And Ann is doing this, so do I need to be closer or, okay. Reading this morning comes from Sir Roger Scruton from a book called Effing the Ineffable, which you gotta love. He writes, and this is just an excerpt. He writes, "There is nothing wrong with referring to the ineffable. The mistake is to describe it. Something can be meaningful even though its meaning eludes all attempts to put it into words. Anybody who goes through life with open mind and open heart will encounter these moments of revelation, moments that are saturated with meaning, but whose meaning cannot be put into words. These moments are precious to us. When they occur, it is as though on the winding, ill-lit stairway of our life, we suddenly come across a window through which we catch sight of another and brighter world, a world to which we belong, but which we cannot enter." That's the end of the reading. I myself have been wrestling for several years with a simple question, and it really is simple and straightforward. It's one most of you have probably wrestled with too. That question, and my asking it, is central to my work in science and spirituality, and yet I've been stymied by it. The question is, what are my religious beliefs? My religious communities are several, and I like it that way. Each community provides a different something to my experience of life, but all of my spiritual communities are big tent communities, and they don't really answer the question. For example, being a UU gives me a place in a community of religious oddballs, if you don't mind me saying that, but we're all odd in different ways, right? So when someone asks me that dreadful question, so do you believe in God or not? It doesn't really work to say I'm a UU, right? It's almost a non sequitur. It's a dodge. I might as well say I'm a plumber, right? I'd like to have a word or a phrase that means what I mean. What do I mean? For me, this question is all wrapped around with this idea of ambiguity. So my friend Linda wrote to me asking for help. And Linda is not any kind of wacko. She's not especially gullible or flaky. So I was really fascinated by her description of what happened to her. And this is a long quote, so it's all her until I say, end quote. She writes, "I wonder if you could help me understand from a more scientific view something that I experienced. I was walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and I was wondering if at the next town we might meet up with my grandson. As we were coming upon the town, an abandoned town high in the mountains and isolated. Now this is going to sound strange, and I have never experienced anything like this. A shaft of energy came from above me and went through me. I hope you will stay with me. It's hard to describe, but it was an energetic force, like a big shaft of light from the sky without the light. I could definitely feel it. It didn't hurt, and right afterwards, I thought my grandson was there, and he was. It was hugely tangible, this force. There was no denying it, and I was very aware. Have you ever heard of anything like this or could explain what this could possibly be? I've had many spiritual explanations. It was so strange that I still wonder what it could be. Thanks for listening." End quote. Notice how tentative Linda is in describing this experience. She knows I'm science-oriented, right? And she expects me to laugh at her. But she had already had spiritual explanations, apparently, none of them quite satisfying to her. So some of you may now be doing what people usually do, which is jumping to conclusions that fit your pre-existing worldviews. For example, some of you might be thinking, it was a hallucination, she was dehydrated or something. Maybe you're thinking it was a visit from angels, or it was a sign from God. Maybe it was a portal to a higher dimension. It was a mild stroke or some other temporary neurological problem. Maybe she was having an LSD flashback, and so on, right? I say there's only one fully authentic and scientific answer that I could give her. Here's what I wrote in reply, and this too is a long quote. I said, Linda, direct experience is all we ever have to work with. Each of us has to make sense of the world as we experience it. And sometimes we try to fit the experience into a worldview that doesn't allow the experience itself to be just as it was. Don't let anyone detract from or alter your memory of this. I have heard others speak of experiences like this. My suggestion to myself as well is to just let it be, just as it was. Any explanation from anyone can only diminish it. I say you should take it on face value as a mysterious, uplifting experience that was real and needs no explanation. Instead of trying to force it into a label, focus on how it felt to you and what the experience means for you right now, today. I think when we take the numinous and ineffable and try to use language to describe it, what was an expansive experience gets filtered through our culture's narrow filters, whatever culture we're from. And that process necessarily corrupts it in some ways. So try to remember it without words. Feel the sensations you felt then and try to carry that wordlessness through the next few hours or days and just see what happens. If you want my thoughts on what it really was, the only honest answer is, I don't know. I believe you that it happened, that it was real and tangible for you, and I believe it's important. I've just learned that too much thinking can ruin experiences like this. End quote. Now, people familiar with my work know that science is really bedrock for me personally. I try not to believe in stuff that there's no evidence for, right? Even then, when there's a lot of evidence for something, I try to take it on as a contingent belief, not as a certainty. The stronger the evidence, the more confident I am about it. But I try to remember that new evidence could come along at any time and shake everything up, right? This is what happened at the beginning of the last century in physics. Some might say, but that, JD, that means you don't actually believe in anything. Well, if belief means unshakable faith, immune to new evidence, then yeah, there's nothing I believe in. I think all knowledge is conditional. All certainties are chutzpah, to borrow from our Hebrew, our Yiddish friends. To believe in something unshakably, completely untethered from experience or evidence is to disconnect oneself from reality, I think, to disconnect ourselves from evolution, from the flow of life. I think conditional belief is a little bit like a boxer's stance or a Tai Chi movement, always flexible and responsive, never trapped in any narrow position. And this is the essence of science itself. It's also pretty unusual for human beings to actually live that way, to work out of that worldview. I'm still pretty much an apprentice of it myself. We humans like to know things, right? Or at least to pretend that we know. So another of my religious communities is the Religious Naturalist Association. And we define ourselves like this, quote, religious naturalists take nature to heart. We hold a naturalist view of how things are in the world, and we also see ourselves as religious in non-traditional ways as we absorb the wonder of being alive and the order and beauty of the cosmos. We ask what is and what matters, seeking answers from natural rather than supernatural sources. That's a quote from the website. So in short, most religious naturalists are atheists, including me, sort of. In my discussions with other atheists there, I'm sometimes a little bit frustrated by what seems to me a dogmatic adherence to materialism that I think is just a little too quick to dismiss personal experience that's ambiguous or hard to explain, like Linda's and like my own. For example, here's where the rubber hits the road. I have long been personal friends with the grandson and great-granddaughter of Edgar Cayce, the famous psychic. I met Edgar Cayce's son, Hugh Lynn Cayce, when I was a young man working at a summer camp run by the Edgar Cayce Foundation. The foundation was organized in 1931 to research and explore ideas found in Edgar Cayce's psychic readings. Ideas like reincarnation, pyramids, astrology, Atlantis, dream interpretation, and a whole lot about diet and health. Now, if you're a science-minded skeptic like me, you may already be doing the eye roll and searching for an exit, right? I get it. Edgar Cayce's psychic powers were thoroughly debunked while he was still alive in the 1920s. And by debunked, I mean that skeptics demonstrated that a clever shyster with knowledge of stage magic and enough rudimentary medical vocabulary could do everything Cayce did without any help from supernatural sources. If not for my personal knowledge of the Cayce family, that'd be enough for me. I'd conclude nothing to see here and move on. And to some extent, I have done that. But I know these people. I know them well. They're not hoaxers. These are good, kind, honest, sincere, authentic people. So on the one hand, my science orientation puts me squarely in community with skeptics who dismiss all this as fraud at best and dangerous pseudoscience at worst. On the other hand, I know these people. They've dedicated their lives to sharing Cayce's life and work, and they're certainly not getting rich from it. Far from it. Now, to be clear, I don't expect anyone to believe in Atlantis or reincarnation based on my assertion that Cayce's descendants are sincere people. I don't myself. So what do I believe? What do I believe? That Edgar Cayce tapped into some supernatural library of eternal truth? Or do I side with the skeptics, sure that it's all so much hokum and naivete? Well, though it may seem irrational and contradictory, I choose both and neither. I choose both and neither. Here's why. I don't believe for a minute that every aspect of the natural world has been discovered by science, or even that all the relevant categories of force and energy have been discovered. Could there be some natural channel by which Edgar Cayce could learn or know things he had no discernible way to know? Well, my most thoughtful atheist friends would say, probably, but my bet is on no. Less thoughtful ones would indignantly retort, Poppycock, even though it was a yes or no question, right? My own answer is, I don't know. And beyond that, I know I don't know because I can't know. This is key to my message this morning. Less than 100 years ago, Werner Heisenberg showed us that because of an inherent ambiguity in the nature of subatomic particles, we can never know both their position and momentum with any precision. That's not quite right. That's a simplistic way of saying it. It's not that we can never know both the momentum and the position. It's that they don't have, each particle doesn't have both a precise position and momentum, because the two qualities are mutually exclusive. When a particle's speed is measured precisely, its location in space smears out to fill the entire universe. It's bizarre, it's wild, but it's true. And when you nail it down to a precise location, its momentum, its speed, becomes a superposition, a stack of an infinite set of values. It becomes an infinite group of numbers rather than a single value. Confusing, right? How could this be? This bizarre bit of knowledge came about in response to the question, are these subatomic particles objects, which the word particles kind of implies? Are they objects or are they waves of energy? Well, even though those two concepts are mutually exclusive, as in they can't possibly be both, these subatomic entities are indeed both, but they can only express qualities of one or the other at any given time. So the position and momentum of quantum particles are known as complementary variables because you can know one or the other, but not both. You can treat particles as objects or as waves, but not both. They are both somehow, but the two models are incompatible. And this condition is called complementarity. That term complementarity, I think, is relevant to my quest for a religious descriptor. The word was coined by Niels Bohr, the founder of quantum physics. And it's defined by this ambiguity and this paradox that I've been talking about, by incompatible opposites that are both simultaneously true. I want to say that again. Incompatible opposites that are both simultaneously true. And this idea that two opposing, conflicting, mutually exclusive models can somehow both be simultaneously true has obviously some really weird implications. For example, you've probably heard of Schrödinger's cat. Yes? Most of you? I'll just review it very quickly. Schrödinger was actually a detractor. He didn't like this quantum ambiguity stuff. And he was trying to illustrate how ridiculous the probabilistic nature of quantum theory was. And his parody of it became this enduring scientific quandary. So he described a sealed box in which a random quantum event, such as a uranium atom emitting radiation, would then be picked up by a Geiger counter and it would trigger the poisoning of a cat. It's kind of a, morbid mind experiment. So after a while, during which the atom has a 50% chance of emitting a bit of radiation like that, the cat would be both simultaneously alive and dead because the atom both emits and doesn't emit the radiation until we open the box and observe it. Now, that sounds ridiculous. How can a cat be both alive and dead? Quantum theory says during that period, it exists in a superposition of both states, emitted and not emitted, taking the cat along with it. Opening the box then triggers quantum collapse it's called, and the cat would at that point only instantly become either alive or dead. Until someone opens the box, the cat is thought to be simultaneously both alive and dead. This is complementarity. Now, we Westerners, and I should say, I don't think I say this later on, more than a century of experimentation has confirmed that that's actually how it works. There's no alternative way of explaining the Schrödinger's cat experiment. Nobody's actually done experiments with cats. It would probably not pass the ethics committees, but other kinds of experiments that mimic it show it to be true. Now, we Westerners tend to be either or people. So all of our logical reasoning is founded on this notion that if A and B are incompatible, then either A is true or B is true or neither. I'm tying myself in knots here, right? If it's either A or B, then one of them's got to be false, right? And all that beautiful either or logic has served us really well over the last 5 centuries of science and before, because it's brought us now through quantum physics to the discovery that we actually live not in an either or universe, but a both and universe. The words wave and particle are either or names for both and phenomena. Both and includes and surrounds either or. I'm roasting up here. I'm just going to take a second. Both and is like an envelope that surrounds either or. Sort of like the word people includes and transcends words like friends and enemies, right? They're all people. So this is a both and universe with some either or neighborhoods, because all of this stuff that we count as real is made of those things that are somehow both waves and particles at the same time. And I have to admit, it's really uncomfortable not knowing what subatomic particles actually are. And if you get on some of these physics forums, you'll see how uncomfortable even physicists are today with this notion. It's uncomfortable not knowing whether it's a cat or a corpse. We like certainty. It's why so many of us are so uncomfortable about androgyny and they, them, theirs as singular pronouns. We want to put our knowledge in boxes, and we don't enjoy having to make whole new boxes like for the singular they. But we can do it. We can do it when we need to. Complementarity, however, is knowledge that's never going to fit in any imaginable box. Accepting it into our worldview would require serious personal discipline, a kind of discipleship even, contemplative practice. Complementarity invokes other concepts like paradox, crazy, strange, impossible, mystery. Well, it seems now maybe I've strayed into the territory of mysticism. That's okay with me. In an interview with Krista Tippett, Nobel physicist Frank Wilczek said this about complementarity and the nature of quantum particles. He said, quote, "Sometimes it's useful to think of it one way. Sometimes it's useful to think of it another way, and both can be informative in different circumstances. But it's very difficult, in fact, impossible to apply them both at once." He goes on, "That's the essence of complementarity. You have to view the world in different ways to do it justice. And the different ways can each be very rich, can each be internally consistent, can each have its own language and rules, but they may be mutually incompatible. And to do full justice to reality, you have to take all of them into account." End quote. Sounds a little bit like Unitarian Universalism, doesn't it? Another Frank Schaeffer, in his book, get this title, "Why I Am an Atheist Who Believes in God." He writes, "With the acceptance of paradox came a new and blessed uncertainty that began to heal the mental illness called certainty." End quote. Now, it may help you to know that Schaeffer is the son of famous Christian televangelists, Francis and I forget his mom's name. He goes on, quote, "These days I hold two ideas about God simultaneously. He, she, or it exists, and he, she, or it doesn't exist. I don't seesaw between these opposites. I embrace them." End quote. Sound familiar? In physics terms, Schaeffer holds these two complementarities in superposition, like waves and particles, applying one or the other as needed to live a fruitful life. But he's not trying to force his reality into one box or another. I aspire to the same. So for a long while, I called myself agnostic, but agnostic literally means not knowing. And for me personally, that just felt a little too indecisive. I'm not agnostic about whether atoms or light are made of particles or waves. I know that they are paradoxically both and neither, and that everything in my life and much of the universe is made of this same odd stuff. Even here, though, this is not an unshakably certain belief, but it's clear enough to base a worldview on. It's as certain as the round earth and the kinship of life. Maybe we could call it quite certain. Similarly, I'm quite certain that there are fundamental aspects of nature yet to be revealed by scientific investigation. It's possible, though not likely, that some of those aspects may allow for phenomenon that we would regard as supernatural or paranormal today. I'm not agnostic about that because I do know. I know that I don't know, and that other people's experiences are different from mine. They're complex, ambiguous, hard to explain. Joseph Campbell says, "He who thinks he knows doesn't know. He who knows he doesn't know knows." So now I'm happy to accept Joseph Campbell's seal of approval. Like Frank Schaeffer, I'm an atheist who prays. I do not believe that an intervening supernatural deity is going to hear my prayer and violate the laws of physics to my benefit. I pray because I hear it, and it affirms my highest values. Does prayer work? If you're praying for a new Mercedes-Benz, I'm quite certain it does not. But as a vehicle, for reaching into my own subconscious and steering myself towards my highest ideals, well, it works for me. God grant me the serenity to embrace the ambiguities I cannot resolve. So asking, do you believe in God or not, is like asking what color the yin-yang symbol is, right? Is it black or is it white? It's both, and it's neither. It's not really a binary question, though it's often posed as one. Do you believe in God or not? Simple yes or no, right? Not simple. I think answering it honestly requires nuance, for me at least, but I think also even for the dogmatic extremes. Which God are you talking about? With what attributes? There's nuance. I am a complementarist. Please be careful not to confuse me with complementarians, because that term refers to religiously defined strict gender roles where men are the rightful heads of their households because Bible something. This is a real group of people out there, complementarians. I thought I had invented the term complementarism from complementarity, quantum complementarity. But in preparing this sermon, I Googled it just to see, and I found a page at Rutgers. Quote, complementarism is the philosophical framework constructed on the basis of the postulate that the principle of complementarity formulated by Niels Bohr in quantum physics can be applied to biology, philosophy, and religion. That's the actual description of an actual course titled Complementarism, a science-based philosophical framework for integrating irreconcilable opposites at Rutgers. So I have a tribe, right? And actually, as it turns out, since then, I've encountered quite a few other people. And on Tuesday night, the Institute on Religion in an Age of Science, iras.org. They have a series of webinars, which since January, I am producing. One of those things where, you got to be careful when you raise your hand. The featured presenter for about 45 minutes, starting at 5 o'clock, will be Dr. Gregory Derry, who is a retired physics professor at Loyola. We'll be talking about complementarism as he applies it to the question of science and religion and materiality. So that it looks like it's going to be a great webinar. And the respondent giving just a quick response, 5-minute response, will be Frank Schaeffer of Why I'm an Atheist Who Believes in God. So I'm really excited about that. And if you want to attend, sorry, I've gotten into the shameless commerce, although there's no money involved, it's all volunteer. It's iras.org. You can look that up and attend the webinar. Where was I? I think as the basis for a worldview, complementary offers guidance for a lot of different social issues as well. So if an electron can be both a particle and a wave, certainly a child can be both male and female. An immigrant can be both an American citizen and speak their first language. A biracial child can be both white and black. Here it is again. And not have to explain herself to anyone, right? I can be both an atheist and deeply religious. I think this approach offers a kind of deep humility that's sorely lacking generally in society, and especially in geopolitics, and even maybe more so in American politics. I'm a complementarist. My theology is embracing the paradox of irreconcilable opposites that are nevertheless both true, or at least both helpful. I'm an atheist who prays, a New Age skeptic who's more interested in your experience than in my explanation of it. My God is nature's nuance, and my spiritual practice is to live fully embracing that, starting with my perplexing fellow humans. So, go ahead. You can ask me if I believe in God. I hope I will remind you that creation itself is deeply ambiguous. I might say, tell me about the most puzzling and mysterious aspects of your beliefs. Where do they contradict themselves? Where do they defy explanation? Because that is the happy crossroad where your path and mine join. So be it. Amen. Thanks for inviting me this morning.